What you're looking at is not AI. These places actually exist. Join us as we reveal 50 examples of urban hell on Earth. Starting with number 1. This train should not be moving. How is this train still moving? This is not an unusual sight in Bangladesh, where trains are cheap and rare, and often the only way to travel long distances. Outside major cities there aren't many rail lines, so when a train finally arrives, everyone shows up at once. Seats and empty spaces run out fast, so people start climbing wherever they can. Before you know it, the roof is full, packed shoulder to shoulder, with legs dangling off the edges like it's just another carriage. Some people ride up there for hours, trusting their grip more than anything else. Inside the cars it's so tight that you can barely breathe. If you're lucky enough to get a seat but need to get off early, good luck getting out at all, because there's a solid wall of bodies that can't move. During holidays it gets worse, with entire families traveling at the same time and nowhere to go. What's honestly wild is that the train itself never seems to give up. From a distance it looks impossibly overloaded, but the train just keeps moving anyway, slow and steady, through fields and small towns. Number 2. Sky High Highway. If you ever have to drive here, I wish you best of luck. This is the Hangzhou interchange in Chongqing, China, a massive highway junction. It connects 8 major roads using more than 20 looping ramps. Instead of spreading outward, the whole thing stacks upward into 5 levels, reaching about 120 feet above the ground. The ramps twist and cross over themselves like a giant traffic knot. This layout exists because the city is boxed in by steep hills with nowhere to expand, so engineers built upward, then upward again, and then one more time just to make it work. It took 8 years to build and finally opened in 2017. The original goal was to move traffic smoothly between the city and the airport, but instead it feels like a puzzle drivers have to solve at full speed. Even GPS gets confused here, and missing one exit sends you somewhere else entirely. Number 3. Luxury Car Graveyards, UAE. At first glance, this looks like a billionaire's parking problem. Out in the desert of the United Arab Emirates, rows of Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Bentleys, and Rolls-Royces sit quietly underneath layers of dust. You'll find places like this near Dubai and Sharjah, and no, this isn't a rare thing. It looks like wealth until you realize these are just junkyards full of abandoned cars, with no one coming back for them. Every year, an estimated 2,000 to 3,000 cars are left behind across the UAE. Most of them were once 6-figure status symbols, now slowly baked by heat and sand. One simple reason is that unpaid debt can land you in prison. When the money runs out, some owners leave the country fast and leave everything behind with it. During the 2008 financial crisis, this happened on a huge scale. Cars were abandoned at airports, on roadsides, sometimes with the keys still inside. Others end up here after crashes, floods, or insurance write-offs that aren't worth fixing. In this heat, even a supercar doesn't age well, and many end up seized and auctioned for a fraction of their original price. Number 4. Capital city on tiny island. Why did they put a capital city onto this tiny piece of land? Maldives is basically wall-to-wall buildings, packed right up to the waterline. There are a few small green patches, but most of what you see is roofs, streets, and more roofs. Around 212,000 people live here on about 8 square kilometers, so space is not a thing you get to have. The airport is on the next island over, and there's a bridge linking them. This is the real Maldives most tourists don't post, because they prefer palm trees, not traffic. A lot of the country's government, shops, ports, and jobs are crammed into this one spot, so everyone ends up passing through. Fresh water is made from seawater, because there are no rivers or lakes on the island. Because the city sits right at sea level, rising water is a real danger, and Malé was badly hit in the 2004 tsunami, which is a scary reminder when the whole island is surrounded by ocean. It's dense, busy, and weirdly fascinating, but I don't even want to know how much it costs for a sea view apartment. Number 5. Trash Island. If you're wondering where all the trash from the Maldives goes, here's the answer. This is Tilafushi, also known as Trash Island. It sits just west of Malay, close enough that you can smell it on the wrong day. Because Malay has no space, its sewage and garbage have to be shipped out here, and the Tilamalay Bridge is currently being built to connect both islands by September of this year. The island didn't exist naturally. It was created in the 1990s by dumping waste into a shallow lagoon. Day after day, rubbish kept coming until the trash turned into land. At its peak, hundreds of tons of garbage arrived here every single day. Some of it is burned, buried, and some of it just sits there. Tourists relax on white sand beaches nearby, mostly unaware this place exists. It's not pretty, but this is how a tiny island nation deals with a big problem. Number 6. 2026 New Year celebrations. Happy New Year, guys. We all know fireworks are loud and bad for the environment, but we agree to ignore that once a year because they look amazing, unless you're a bird. This is a terrible night to be a bird. But some countries really do go all out, like China, for example. At some point, this stops looking like a celebration and starts looking like a hellfire invasion from another planet. The sky lights up non-stop, with smoke and explosions everywhere. People online are asking if they're celebrating New Year or secretly launching missiles, and joke that no one pollutes better than China, like that's part of the show. Then you get to the drone shows, which are becoming more and more popular every year. They are considered better for the environment, reusable, and safer, which is a big plus. The shows also look great with complex custom animations and stuff like that. They start wondering who controls them and say it feels less like a show and more like a military flex disguised as entertainment. I mean, just imagine 50,000 of these waiting for a signal. And then there's Albania, where it looks like the whole city decided to personally fight the sky with fireworks. The funny thing is, it's also illegal to buy or sell fireworks in this country, but that clearly didn't stop anyone. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed your new year. Number 7. House in the middle of highway. Why is there a house in the middle of a highway? Near Shanghai, in a town called Jingxi, a 2-story home ended up completely surrounded by an expressway. The road splits around the building and then reconnects, like the house was a traffic cone no one bothered to move. Cars pass by at roof height, close enough for drivers to look straight into the windows. To get inside the house, the owner has to walk through a concrete tunnel under the road. It belongs to Huang Ping, who turned down a relocation offer of about 1.6 million yuan, and the road was built around him anyway. Now the walls shake every time trucks pass, dust lies everywhere, and the quiet is gone for good. He lives here with his young grandson, waiting for the highway to fully open. People stop just to take photos, like it is some kind of roadside attraction. In China, places like this are called nail houses, homes that refuse to be pulled out. It was a brave decision at the time, but Huang later said he regrets not taking the offer and would now accept it. Number 8. Train through building. In Chongqing, someone's living room shares a wall with a train station. This is Liziba, where a monorail runs straight through the middle of a residential block. Not next to it, not underneath it, but directly through several floors. The building and the station were planned together, not as a mistake, but as a workaround. This city is steep, crowded, and has to make use of any empty space, so instead of moving buildings out of the way, they ran the train through one. The monorail uses rubber tires and heavy soundproofing to try and keep the noise down. Inside the apartments, people mostly feel a low rumble, like distant thunder, and for commuters, it's almost too convenient. You take the elevator, wait a minute, and the train arrives inside your building. Outside, tourists stop just to watch a train disappear into someone's home. Number 9. Mount Everest of trash. From far away, this looks like a hill, until you get closer and realize hills aren't supposed to smell like this. This is the Ghazipur landfill on the edge of New Delhi. People call it the Mount Everest of trash, which, at first, sounds like a joke until you see it in person. The dump covers more than 40 acres and rises over 70 meters, taller than many nearby buildings. It opened in 1984 and was officially declared full by 2002. It seems like nobody told that to the garbage trucks, because around 2,000 tons of waste are still dumped here every single day. The pile keeps growing by several meters a year, even though parts of it are already unstable. Sections of the landfill have collapsed before, killing people underneath. Many live and work close enough that the smell carries for kilometers on bad days. Toxic gas leaks out, fires break out regularly, and smoke just hangs in the air. When it rains, dark liquid seeps out of the trash and into the surrounding ground and water. The only ones who really like this place are birds, who treat it like an endless buffet. Number 10. Urban hell in the middle of paradise. Hong Kong is home to some of the world's ugliest architecture. At least the view is great here though, unless of course, your window lines up with the tower across from you. This is the Hong Kong Park View, a private estate built in 1989 and surrounded by dense green hills in every direction. It is made up of 18 towers, each around 20 stories tall, holding just under 1,000 apartments total. From a distance, the contrast is hard to ignore, feeling less like a neighborhood and more like a block of concrete dropped into the forest. You're only about 25 minutes from central Hong Kong, but up at nearly 300 meters above sea level, it feels much farther away. There's no real street life, just quiet internal roads and security gates. The project was criticized from the start for breaking the calm of the country park. But supporters say it keeps development packed into one spot instead of spreading across the hills. Either way, only people who can afford to live here get to argue about it. Number 11. Replica of White House in India. What is the White House doing on top of a skyscraper? You're looking at a $30 million White House replica sitting on top of a 33-story skyscraper in Bengaluru, about 120 meters above the street. The house itself is huge, roughly 3,700 square meters of columns, lawns, and quiet space. There's an infinity pool, rooftop gardens, and a helipad built right into the roof. It belongs to Vijay Mallya, a billionaire businessman once known for his luxury lifestyle, private jets, and flashy parties. He built this as a personal residence, meant to sit above the city like a symbol of success. So what makes this place so bad? From up here, the city looks calm, green, and far away. But directly underneath the balcony, there are slums and neighborhoods packed tight without reliable water or power. The difference is so sharp it's hard to ignore. The house was almost finished when its owner fled the country in 2016 over fraud charges and unpaid loans. He left India owing billions, and the mansion was frozen in time before anyone ever moved in. After that, everything stopped. Now the mansion is empty, unfinished, and locked up. No lights, no people, no sound, just guards and silence. Number 12. Bridge on top of residential buildings. In Guiyang, the road doesn't pass near your home. It passes on top of it. This is the Shukusi Bridge, built in 1997. 2 years later, they built apartment blocks directly underneath it. Not accidentally, not temporarily, but on purpose. More than 10 residential buildings have a highway bolted onto their roofs. Cars drive over your ceiling like it's normal infrastructure behavior. Residents say their rooms shake constantly, and at night, the noise is so bad some people sleep with cotton in their ears. Engines, horns, brakes, all of it right above your head. Instead of moving people, planners stack traffic on top of them. It works on paper, but living under it is a different story. It's almost like the city was playing Tetris with human lives. Number 13. Is this AI? With AI everywhere, people can't even tell what's real anymore. So just to be clear, this place actually exists. This is Aizawl, the capital of Mizoram, near India's border with Myanmar. The city is built on steep hills, so it has no choice but to climb upward. Flat land is rare here, which means houses stack tightly along the slopes. From far away it looks chaotic, like buildings were dropped wherever they landed. Up close, you realize there really wasn't much room to be picky, and there's no clean grid, just roads bending wherever the hill allows. The city didn't flatten the hills, it squeezed itself into them, trying to find any available corner to build more. Despite how packed it looks, most of Mizoram is still covered in forest, and the high elevation of over 1,100 meters above sea level keeps the air cooler than in most cities. Number 14. China traffic during Golden Week. Would you survive this traffic jam? What you're seeing is China during Golden Week, when huge parts of the country travel at the same time. This clip is from Guangzhou in Anhui, but scenes like this happen all over the country. Highways that normally move fast turn into parking lots almost overnight. The trouble usually starts at toll booths, where many lanes squeeze back into just a few. Then cars pile up for kilometers and barely move for hours, sometimes stuck for longer than a full workday. At night, it's just red brake lights, trucks on every side, and nowhere to pull over. During the day, the line cuts through fields and trees and never seems to end. Everyone is trying to get home at once because the holiday schedule is the same nationwide. Some drivers bring food and water, others just sleep in their cars and wait. In 2010, a jam in this region stretched nearly 100 kilometers and trapped people for 12 days. But this isn't rare or surprising. It happens almost every year. Number 15. China bicycle graveyards. They say bikes can help fix traffic. But what if there were too many of them? By the way, if you thought this was a flower park at first, don't worry, you aren't alone. Looking closer, it's actually a huge pile of abandoned rental bikes packed into an empty lot. These piles are made of thousands of bicycles dumped into empty lots across China. The bright yellow, blue, and orange frames stack so tightly, they almost look intentional. From far away, it feels neat, even calming. Up close, it's bent wheels, snap baskets, rusted chains, and pedals pointing in every direction. But how did this even happen? Around 2016 and 2017, bike share companies flooded cities with millions of bikes almost overnight. There were far more bikes than riders, and almost no rules about where they could be left. People parked them on sidewalks, in alleys, and just walked away and never came back. Cities eventually started hauling them off, just to clear streets and doorways. Some of these piles hold tens of thousands of bikes, some stacked higher than nearby buildings. What's strange is how many still look barely used. Number 16. Amsterdam. Now I know this isn't the city you expected to see on this list, but while we're on the topic of bicycles, Amsterdam often comes to mind. The city looks calm, and it is, until you discover the canals are basically a bike graveyard. There are an estimated 880,000 to a million bicycles in the city, which is somehow more bikes than people. And with 165 canals cutting through town, gravity gets a lot of chances to do its thing. Every year, around 15,000 bikes get pulled out of the water. That means somewhere out there is a bike living its best underwater life right now. A special crew goes out with a boat and a giant mechanical claw, like they're playing an expensive arcade game. They drag up twisted frames, wheels, locks, and the occasional "how did that even happen" pile. A lot of these bikes didn't fall in accidentally. They got tossed in, stolen, vandalized, or just dumped. And sometimes it's not even bikes. They'll haul out refrigerators and even cars, about 50 of them a year, so be careful if you're ever parking near the canals. You start to wonder if the canal bottom isn't even a bottom, but a storage. Number 17. Belgrade liquid trees. In Belgrade, Serbia, they decided trees were taking too long to grow, so in 2022, the city started testing something called liquid trees. And no, it's not a metaphor. These are giant glowing tanks filled with about 600 liters of water and microalgae. The algae absorb carbon dioxide and release oxygen, just like real trees. Except instead of bark and leaves, it looks like a sci-fi vending machine. The project is called Liquid 3, and it was installed in busy, polluted areas where planting trees is difficult. Researchers claim the algae are 10 to 50 times more efficient at capturing CO2 than actual trees, which sounds great until you remember trees also give shade and space for people and birds. These tanks do none of that. They just sit there, glowing, and quietly bubbling away. The idea is to help air quality in dense parts of Belgrade where concrete won, and to be fair, it does technically work, but it also looks like the city is being slowly terraformed, and it gives some people the fear that cities will see this and think, great, no more parks. Number 18. Urban hell in the 19th century. Urban hell existed long before the world was filled with cars and highways. Don't believe me? Just look at this place. In 1887, Stockholm built the Stockholm telephone tower right in the middle of the city. It stood about 80 meters tall, made of bare metal and wrapped in cables. Telephones were still new, so this was basically high-tech showing off. Around 5,500 phone lines were connected here, all hanging out in the open air. From nearby rooftops, it looked like the entire city was caught in a spiderweb. Every phone call in Stockholm depended on this one tower working, so if something failed here, nobody was calling anyone. The cables stretched out in every direction, crossing streets and buildings without much concern for looks. From far away, it probably seemed impressive. Up close, it must have been loud, messy, and impossible to ignore. The tower stayed in use until 1913, when phone lines finally went underground. After that, it just stood there as a reminder of early tech experiments, until a fire in 1952 led to its demolition the following year. Technology has certainly come far though. Number 19. China's three-story bridge. At first I thought this was a roller coaster, but it is in fact a three-story bridge stacked on itself, spiraling up Qianlong Mountain in northern China. The mountain is about 1,370 meters tall, and the bridge climbs it in wide looping turns. From the air, white pillars rise straight out of green hills. The structure uses around 7,700 tons of steel, which sounds extreme until you see how much open space it hangs over. At its highest point, the bridge rises about 350 meters, taller than the Eiffel Tower. It opened in 2019 as part of an 18-mile road called the Highway Above the Clouds. Driving it means circling the same mountain again and again while slowly gaining height. People say it feels like a roller coaster, except you're doing it in a truck. The landscape around it is quiet, forested, and already beautiful on its own. Then this road cuts through it, like a Hot Wheels track dropped from the sky. Some people think it's impressive, while others think it ruined the mountain. Either way, it's impossible to ignore, and knowing China, stopping at 3 levels almost feels restrained. Number 20. Dumping site next to neighborhood. Imagine living next to a dumping site that never stops growing. That's life in Dandora, just outside Nairobi, Kenya. It opened in 1977 inside a former quarry and was supposed to be temporary, and in 2001, officials said it was too dangerous to keep using. It was considered full years ago, but the city never found a real replacement. A court even ordered it to be shut down within months, and it still keeps operating anyway. Today, thousands of tons of waste are dumped here every single day, with trucks lining up like it's a normal delivery route. People make a living here too, with thousands of waste pickers sorting through fresh piles as soon as they hit the ground. But what you see on the surface is only the top layer of the problem, because it sits right next to homes, roads, and everyday life. The trash piles burn constantly, filling nearby neighborhoods with toxic smoke. Some days the smoke is so thick that it looks like fog, except it smells like melted plastic. People living close by breathe the toxic air, and the soil and groundwater are polluted, with lead levels far above what's considered safe. But what if there was something even worse? A city built on top of a landfill? Look no further, because at number 21, we've got Garbage City. Welcome to Garbage City in Egypt. And yes, the name is exactly what it sounds like. Trash is everywhere here, because trash is the economy. Its real name is Manshiat Nasser, a neighborhood built at the base of the Mokattam Hills on the eastern edge of Cairo. Every single day, around 9,000 tons of garbage from across Cairo end up here. Families sort it all by hand, usually right outside their homes. Plastic in one pile, metal in another, food scraps somewhere else. Many people are born into this work, and most will spend their entire lives doing it. There's no proper sewage system, running water is unreliable, and safety gear is almost non-existent. People work barefoot, kids play next to trash piles. Animals move freely through the streets, feeding on organic waste. The streets are narrow, crowded, and permanently dirty, making it look completely unlivable from the outside. But here's the part that makes this place impossible to ignore. Garbage City recycles more of Cairo's waste than most modern systems ever manage. What looks chaotic from the outside is actually one of the most efficient informal recycling networks on the planet. In fact, estimates suggest 60 to 80% of the trash here is recycled. It's dangerous, unfair, and exhausting, but it somehow works. Garbage City may look like Cairo's worst problem, but without it, the city would be drowning in its own waste. Number 22. Lagos, Nigeria. This is Africa's largest city, with over 20 million people packed into a space that keeps filling up faster than it can breathe, and on the path to become one of the world's largest cities. Traffic here isn't a problem to solve. It's just how time works. A 10-kilometer drive can take 2 to 5 hours, and nobody is surprised by that anymore. On average, people here lose about 3 hours daily sitting in traffic, which turns basic errands into full-day affairs. People eat, sell snacks, nap, argue, and rethink their life choices while the cars barely move. Just outside the city center is Makoko, a neighborhood built directly on the water. Around 80,000 to 100,000 people live here, and about a third of the settlement sits on wooden stilts above a sewage-filled lagoon. There are no roads, only narrow canals, so boats replace cars, even for kids going to school. Makoko started as a fishing village and grew into a dense, improvised city without permission or planning. There's no proper sewage system, so waste goes straight into the water below the homes. That same water is still used for washing and cooking, because there's no real alternative. The area isn't officially recognized by the government, which means basic services mostly don't arrive. From above it looks chaotic, overwhelming, almost unreal, and up close it smells worse than it looks, which locals joke is part of the experience. Number 23. The capital of traffic jams. Some cities in Vietnam are experiencing rapid urbanization, and traffic is the first thing that teaches you how these cities work. In Hanoi, the capital, traffic jams aren't events, they're the default setting. Motorbikes, cars, buses, and trucks all push into narrow roads that were never meant for this many people. At rush hour, the average speed can drop to around walking pace, sometimes slower, so crossing the city can take hours, even if the distance looks short on a map. This is happening more and more because cars are cheaper than ever, the population keeps growing, and public transport can't keep up. And when it floods, which happens regularly, whole neighborhoods funnel into the same few dry roads. Ho Chi Minh City feels just as intense. From above, it looks endless, with narrow houses packed wall to wall. On the street, motorbikes flow non-stop through gaps that barely exist. The city grew fast and upward, leaving little room for trees or wide roads. It's loud, chaotic, and tiring, but it works once you learn how it moves. In both cities, traffic isn't something to fix. It's something people learn to live with. Number 24. One-kilometer residential complex. This building doesn't feel like it ends. You stand at one end, and the other end just keeps going and going and going. On the edge of Rome, a building stretches nearly a full kilometer across the landscape. This is Corviale, built in the 1970s to house thousands of people in one continuous block. It's so long that even from the middle, you can't see where it ends. There are rows of windows, repeated doors, and hallways that all look exactly alike. Walking from one end to the other takes so long it feels like a small commute. One entire floor was supposed to be filled with shops and public services, but that idea didn't last very long. People moved into the space instead, and the original plan slowly fell apart. Some hallways feel active and lived in, with noise and movement, while others feel empty and forgotten, sometimes just a few doors away. Number 25. Suburban hell in Boise, Idaho. You ever watch The Truman Show or Vivarium and get a little uncomfortable? That quiet, artificial calm where everything feels slightly off. This neighborhood at the edge of Boise, Idaho, instantly reminded me of that. It just looks manufactured down to the last detail. From above, this neighborhood snaps into perfect loops and blocks, like someone dragged the same group of houses across the map again and again. There's no mess, no accidents, and no room for anything unplanned. Every house faces the street the same way, with the same roof shape, the same driveway, and the same small patch of grass. The roads curve just enough to slow your car down, but not enough to ever surprise you. You can drive around for 10 minutes straight and still feel like you never really left your own block. Backyards are tightly fenced, with each house politely pretending the next one doesn't exist. There is grass everywhere, trimmed and green, but almost no trees to block the sun. At the very last street, the neighborhood doesn't slowly fade out, it just stops. One step past the houses, and you're suddenly looking at dry, empty land with no transition at all. Well, at least there's a pool. Number 26. A city inside a single building. A city inside a single building? Yes, that actually exists. And it's in Whittier, Alaska. Almost the entire town, around 200 people, lives inside one 14-story concrete building. It was built in 1956 as an army barracks, and at some point it just turned into the town. What's even crazier is that you barely ever have to leave it at all. Inside this one building, there's apartments, a post office, a grocery store, a clinic, a church, and a laundry. You can wake up, grab your mail, buy food, see a doctor, and go back to your apartment without stepping outside once. That's a big deal, because outside is cold, windy, and usually miserable. The town is surrounded by mountains, and the only road in goes through a tunnel that closes at night. So if you miss the cutoff, you're stuck until morning. People joke that it's not a town, but a vertical neighborhood experiment. Elevators replace streets, and running into people you know is basically guaranteed. It's strange, a little unsettling, but also weirdly practical. Number 27. World's thinnest apartment building. This is the Nerima Triangle building in Tokyo, and at first, it doesn't even look real. I had to go check on Google Maps just to make sure it exists. It's an ultra-narrow apartment building squeezed into a leftover slice of land that would be a sidewalk in most countries. It might seem miserable, but this is peak Tokyo logic. If there's space for one human to stand, there's space for rent. From the outside, it looks like it's somehow stuck in a two-dimensional world, and half the internet refuses to believe it isn't an optical illusion. Surprisingly, inside are 4 separate apartments, which makes people ask questions like how you get a bed upstairs, or where the walls end and the rooms begin. One tour showed bathrooms smaller than airplane toilets, and rooms designed under the assumption you won't be having many guests over. I think that it just needs some galvanized square steel to extend it. Number 28. Lahore, Pakistan. This is one of Pakistan's biggest cities, and it's now known for having some of the worst air on earth. Here, the sky isn't really a sky, it's more like a gray ceiling hanging low. In winter, the smog gets so thick that people wear masks just to walk outside. Sometimes you can only see a few meters ahead, and that's it. The air is loaded with smoke from old vehicles, factories, brick kilns, and crop fires nearby. There aren't enough rules, and the ones that exist aren't enforced very well. Pollution levels here can reach 3 times the maximum safe limit, and sometimes much higher. Breathing starts to feel like you're inhaling dust instead of air. Traffic keeps moving through the haze, adding more exhaust to the mix. People still go to work, shop, and commute because life doesn't stop for bad air. Officials are even talking about making artificial rain by cloud seeding to help wash the smog away. Number 29. New Delhi, India. In 2019, India's capital was repeatedly ranked the most polluted city in the world. On bad days, the government literally tells people to stay inside. Diesel trucks are banned, construction is stopped, and factories are told to slow down. But even then, the sky stays gray. Smoke from millions of cars and motorcycles mixes with burning trash and factory fumes, and the air gets so thick it feels like weather, not pollution. Fine particles reach more than 20 times the safe limit, so breathing outside starts to feel like a long-term decision. But it's not just the air either. Rivers near the city are often covered in toxic foam while people still bathe in them. Millions of people live with this every day, while leaders argue about who's responsible. They promise long-term goals, like cutting emissions by 2070, which sounds hopeful until you realize how far away that is. Number 30. Japanese subway stations. In cities like Tokyo and Osaka, subway stations move people the way factories move parts. The platforms fill up so fast that the painted lines on the floor almost disappear, and there's barely any empty space left. Everyone lines up, even though they already know what's about to happen. When the train pulls in, you can see faces pushed up near the windows before the doors even open. People don't walk into the train so much as get pulled into it by the crowd behind them. That's when station staff, called Osha, step in, wearing gloves and calmly pushing people inside so the doors can actually close. This isn't a mess or an emergency. It's normal, planned, and expected. On some of Tokyo's busiest lines, trains carry more than 8 million passengers every day. Inside, bodies are packed chest to back, with no room to turn or move your arms. That's why people hold their phones up, because there's literally nowhere else to put them. Number 31. Bali. What's this monstrosity at Kelingking Beach on Bali's Nusa Penida? Someone looked at one of the most famous natural views in the world and decided it needed a giant glass elevator bolted onto the cliff. The idea was to make the beach more accessible, but instead it added scaffolding, sparks, and grinding metal, completely destroying the view. People actually complained about this elevator so much, so they decided to disband the project and are currently in the works of getting rid of all that was put up. Bali is famous for its temples, stone statues, and beaches that look like they were designed for postcards. But in recent years, tourism has exploded, and because of that, many new buildings and shopping centers are being built to squeeze as much money out of visitors as possible. New hotels, shopping centers, beach clubs, there's construction on almost every corner, and people are already hating on places like the new Sanur shopping center for turning quiet areas into malls. Getting around doesn't help, especially for tourists who aren't used to the Indonesian style of driving. The island is basically built for motorbikes, with narrow roads that were never meant for this many people, and it gets even worse in some areas with steep hills, tight lanes, and constant potholes and sharp curves. So for people wanting to learn how to drive a motorbike on this island, I don't recommend it. Sometimes you can see where you want to go with your own eyes, but the road forces you to take a long loop around the whole city instead of just going straight. And with everyone driving on the one main road, traffic gets even worse in the evenings when every tourist heads to the same places like Finn's or Atlas Club at the same time. Locals especially ride here like they have 9 lives, squeezing bikes through gaps that look impossible to fit through, while cars inch forward for any new available space they can get, almost touching the one in front. Bali traffic lights exist but are often sparse and treated more as suggestions. Walking isn't much better, because sidewalks practically don't exist, so you're usually just forced to walk next to cars. Don't get me wrong though, Bali is still beautiful and totally worth visiting. Just be careful driving here, guys. Number 32. Burlington Beach, Canada. This is Burlington Beach, right on Lake Ontario. Yes, people actually swim here. On a hot summer day, locals show up with towels, coolers, and very low expectations. Instead of palm trees, you get massive power lines hanging directly overhead, and instead of a peaceful horizon, there's a huge industrial bridge and steel towers humming non-stop. The beach sits directly under giant transmission lines that cut straight across the water. They're not subtle, and you definitely don't forget they're there. They're basically the main attraction. To make it weirder, this area is home to about 17 species of birds, but some of them don't see the power lines, so while you're swimming, birds can occasionally hit the cables and drop into the water nearby. People have suggested burying the power lines underground, but that would cost around $150 million, so for now the plan is just don't look up. The water itself is tested and is actually pretty clean, but visually, this feels less like a beach and more like a level from a dystopian video game. Number 33. Citarum River, Indonesia. This is the Citarum River in Indonesia, or at least it used to be a river. It runs about 300 kilometers across Java, but here it looks more like a road made of trash. Plastic bags, bottles, and wrappers packed together so tightly you can barely see any water. More than 25 million people still depend on this river for daily life, while sewage and factory waste pour straight into it. Over 2,000 factories sit along the banks, dumping chemicals without much filtering. Stuff like mercury, lead, and other heavy metals just floats past people's homes. Houses crowd right up against the river because water, even bad water, is hard to move away from. The government has announced big cleanup plans and strict dumping bans, but hidden pipes, corruption, and years of neglect keep everything flowing right in. For many locals, this polluted river is still used for washing and sometimes drinking. Make sure you guys don't use plastic straws though. Number 34. Cat Ba Island. Cat Ba Island in Vietnam is supposed to be rainforests, beaches, and calm water. Since 2017, it's also been a 110-acre construction site. Developers decided the island's largest bay was wasted space because it was, water. So they started filling it in to build hotels, an amusement park, and 3 golf courses, part of a $3 billion project to turn the island into a luxury resort. Cat Ba is officially a biosphere reserve, home to rare plants and animals, including the Cat Ba langur, and there are only about 70 of them left. They have started hiding in caves just to get away from all the construction noise and boat engines. Locals say most people came here for the scenery that's now being buried. Construction is supposed to finish soon, and then we'll see what's left. Number 35. Florida Hurricane Aftermath. Florida gets hit by many hurricanes because it sticks straight out into warm ocean water, which is basically fuel for massive storms. When they make it to land, they don't just bring wind and rain, they tear entire neighborhoods apart. Afterwards, the streets are left covered in trash, furniture, appliances, and the remains of houses that used to be someone's home. One of the worst examples is Hurricane Andrew in 1992, a Category 5 storm with winds around 265 kilometers per hour, and it flattened large parts of South Florida. Nearly 50,000 homes were destroyed, about 175,000 people were left homeless, and 43 people lost their lives. It was so devastating that it completely changed Florida's building codes because it exposed how fragile many homes really were. But many other hurricanes have been just as brutal, like the 1935 Labor Day hurricane in the Florida Keys, Hurricane Camille in 1969, and Hurricane Michael in 2018, all reached Category 5 strength and caused massive destruction. More recently, storms like Hurricane Ian in 2022 and then Hurricane Milton in 2024 showed that even with better preparation, the damage can still be overwhelming. This image also clearly shows a wealth divide between people, where one community was able to repair and rebuild their homes, while the other was left with piles of debris. Homes built stronger and with more money behind them also came out far better than those that weren't. Hopefully one day humanity will figure out how to better manage hurricanes, or even stop them before they ever reach land. Number 36. Rooftop Park in Rio de Janeiro. When there's no space left in the city and can't build more parks, you stack them. Let's just hope the kids won't get bored of the slide and start climbing the fence instead. This playground sits on top of an apartment building in Rio de Janeiro, several stories up. It's surrounded by tall metal fences, so at least the kids don't go sliding off the sides of the building. And hopefully, they'll get over their fear of heights. Inside, you'll find a slide, a tiny playhouse, and exactly 0 trees. And the view? Concrete, and even more concrete. No grass, no dirt, and no shade. But parents can relax knowing their kids won't run into traffic. There are no cars, no streets, and nowhere else to go for a child to get lost. Instead, they'll just run laps on a rooftop like it's prison yard recess. But to be fair, it's better than nothing. Number 37. Tiny Dog Park. Is this a dog park or a dog jail? This might just be the smallest dog park in the world, located somewhere in the United States. At first glance, it looks less like a park and more like a bathroom break with a logo on it. It's fully fenced, just in case your dog tries to make a daring escape across the parking lot. Inside, you'll find artificial grass, a fire hydrant, and absolutely no room to run. If your dog throws the ball, that's the whole activity, because you can't play fetch here, only place and release. The park was installed by a real estate company called Kimco, who like to drop these outside pet stores and vets, usually right in the middle of massive parking lots, because that's where the space is. It's technically a dog park, in the same way a closet is technically a room. Your dog won't make friends here, but it might make eye contact with a Honda Civic. This isn't about play, it's about efficiency. Go fetch, boy. Just don't blink. Number 38. Hotel next to a power plant. At first glance, this looks like a cute little countryside hotel. Then you arrive, turn your head slightly to the right, and boom, massive EC2 coal power plant. This is the Hotel Alicia in Łódź, Poland, and it sits just a few feet away from a power plant. That cooling tower isn't a quirky landmark, it's your roommate. Yes, the hotel has been accused of false advertising, and honestly, fair enough. The plant shut down in 2015, so at least you're not breathing coal dust with your breakfast. But the tower is still there, towering over the place like it's judging your life choices. To be fair, the hotel itself is clean, modern, and gets decent reviews. The staff is friendly, the rooms are nice, and the hot water is probably excellent. Still, nothing kills the vacation vibe faster than opening the curtains and seeing what looks like a villain's lair. Number 39. Bangkok State Tower. This building looks less like a hotel and more like copy-pasted balconies over and over. This is the State Tower in Bangkok, made famous by The Hangover Part 2. It stands about 247 meters tall, with 68 floors stacked straight up. From the outside, all you really see are balconies. Hundreds of identical curves repeat over and over, floor after floor. After a few seconds, your eyes stop counting and your brain gives up. Inside, this place holds apartments, offices, shops, and 2 5-star hotels. It's impressive, efficient, but slightly unsettling at the same time. Number 40. Rio de Janeiro. At street level of Rio de Janeiro, there are beautiful beaches, glass towers, and palm trees. Right above that, the hills are covered in favelas, with small, boxy houses literally stacked on top of each other. Most weren't planned ahead of time. They were added one room at a time as families grew, built wherever there was space, eventually going to the top of hills. Many of these areas exist partly outside government control, which means narrow streets, crowded homes, and limited sanitation. Crime isn't everywhere, but it's never far away. Vidigal is considered relatively safe and even attracts tourists, though safe here still means staying alert. Rocinha, the largest favela, sits between some of Rio's wealthiest neighborhoods. Officially, about 70,000 people live there, but the real number may be closer to 150,000. Cars have trouble getting through, so motorcycles and small buses are more common. Number 41. Dubai. Dubai looks polished and futuristic at first glance. It is often called the Las Vegas of the Middle East, a city of glass towers, luxury hotels, and artificial beaches. But 40 years ago, this area was mostly desert and a single main road. That lonely building on Sheikh Zayed Road used to sit next to almost nothing, but after oil was discovered offshore in 1966, everything changed. Money poured in, cranes followed, and the city expanded at a massive scale. Highways grew from 2 lanes into 12, and skyscrapers replaced dunes. The glow-up was aggressive, and it worked, but behind the luxury is a workforce most tourists never see. Construction workers are flown in from across Asia for wages as low as $40 a month. Their passports are often taken by employers and are paid delayed or sometimes even never. They live packed into labor camps, far from the pools and penthouses they build. And with extreme 50-degree heat and poor safety rules, their job becomes extremely dangerous, sometimes even deadly, because it is reported that thousands of migrant workers die across the Gulf every year. Number 42. Chinese Ghost Town. This is what happens when a city gets built before anyone gets invited. Kangbashi is located in Ordos, Inner Mongolia, where a coal boom in the early 2000s created huge amounts of money. The plan was to build a new city for about 1 million workers and their families. Construction started fast, and by 2003, they were already carving out about 90,000 acres of land. They put up towers, wide roads, parks, big monuments, and shiny cultural buildings, ready for the crowds. But there was a tiny problem: the crowds didn't show up. Developers assumed people from nearby Dongsheng would just move over, but the place went up so quickly that the construction quality got shaky, and the costs scared people off. By around 2010, many locals decided it was safer to stay where they were instead of betting their life savings on a fresh concrete dream. Roughly $161 billion went into this project. Yet today, only around 150,000 people live there, leaving 80 to 90% of the buildings empty. And Kangbashi isn't even alone. China is estimated to have tens of millions of empty apartments sitting around. Number 43. Hangzhou Car Graveyard. This is what looks like when a kid decides he wants to play with his toy cars and dumps them all out of the storage box. Hangzhou is known for temples, tech campuses, and beautiful scenery. And then there's this. On the edge of the city sits a massive field full of dead cars. Thousands of vehicles are piled together, some brand new, others already fading and rusting. This graveyard was spotted in 2021, and the wild part is the cars weren't stolen or dumped by owners. They were abandoned by the company that made them. Back in 2018, Chinese automaker Lifan wanted to jump into the future with self-driving robotaxis. They launched a robotaxi service called Panda Auto, which actually worked and had millions of users. Then they decided to switch to their own untested electric autonomous cars, but that's where everything fell apart. When the cars were trialed, they glitched, failed tests, and caused constant problems. Money kept pouring in anyway, until the company collapsed under billions in debt. By 2020, both Lifan and Panda Auto were bankrupt, leaving thousands of useless cars, so they left them in a field near Hangzhou and walked away. Number 44. Tokyo's Shibuya Crossing. This is Shibuya Crossing in Tokyo, where thousands of people pile up at the edges, all ready for what's about to happen. When the signal flips, the street turns into a moving carpet of humans. This intersection was opened in 1973 and is one of Tokyo's busiest districts, packed with fashion stores, clubs, and stations stacked on stations. From above, it really does look like an ant colony that just got disturbed. Despite the chaos, almost everyone follows the rules. No pushing, no panic, just flow. That's the strange part. It works. Tourists stop in the middle to film, while locals keep walking, like this is just another Tuesday night. Cars wait while people completely take over the street for a few seconds. You feel rushed and invisible at the same time. Number 45. Highway over neighborhood. In Naples, some people don't live next to the highway. They live under it. This apartment block sits directly beneath the Tangenziale di Napoli, a 3-lane motorway carrying about 270,000 vehicles every single day. The highway opened in 1972, but many of these homes were already here long before that. Instead of moving the road, planners just dropped it on top of the neighborhood. People living there can hear engines, horns, trucks, day and night, right above their ceiling, and sunlight barely makes it in because the sky is mostly concrete now. Not to mention the air quality and smell from exhaust fumes. Moving out sounds nice, but other housing is too expensive or hard to find. Number 46. Wang Fuk Court Fire. Hong Kong has a lot of tall buildings, but this one turned into a nightmare in a single afternoon. This was Wang Fuk Court in Taipei, a government homeownership scheme estate with 8 31-story blocks. Nearly 2,000 flats were packed into this complex, and a lot of the residents were older people who don't move fast. On the 26th of November 2025, a small fire started near the bottom of one building during renovation work. At the time, the towers were covered head to toe in bamboo scaffolding and green safety netting. The fire caught the netting and spread upward very quickly. Windows were reportedly sealed with flammable foam boards, so the fire didn't just stay outside. It spread into flats, between units and nearby buildings. People were trapped in tight corridors and tiny units, and some didn't even hear alarms. Imagine looking out your window for air and realizing the window is basically part of the problem. Firefighters fought it for nearly 2 days, and by the end, 161 people were dead, including a firefighter, and many others were injured. When it was over, there was rage over poor safety rules, and investigations into renovation materials later led to several men linked to the contractor being arrested on suspicion of manslaughter. Number 47. London. In 2023, on Bethnal Green Road in London, garbage collectors went on strike over pay and working conditions. Trash collection stopped, but the trash absolutely did not. Black bags piled up day by day, stacked along the pavement and outside shops. Food waste, boxes, broken furniture, and leaking bags sat out in the open. Rats and seagulls arrived almost immediately and behaved like they had always lived there. Instead of crossing the street, people had to walk around piles of trash. After a couple of weeks, businesses got tired of waiting and paid out of pocket to clean the streets themselves. The strike made one thing very clear though. This city runs on workers most people never think about. Number 48. New York City micro apartments. This is a micro apartment, and yes, that's the whole thing. Housing prices in New York City are some of the highest in the world, so people take what they can get. This one clocks in at around 24 square meters, which is generous if you don't stretch your arms. Your kitchen, bedroom, office all share the same corner. There's technically space for everything you need, just not at the same time. Inviting friends over is possible, but only if everyone likes each other a lot. Back in 1879, the city passed a law saying every room needed access to plain air, which sounded great at the time. Turns out plain air can also mean staring directly into another apartment forever. These apartments were marketed as a smart fix for the housing crisis. Others call them expensive storage units for humans. Rent can still cost thousands a month, because this is New York, and the space keeps shrinking while the price keeps rising. Number 49. Taipei apartments. If New York shrinks people inside, Taipei just squeezes everyone together. They always say location is everything, but it comes to a point. This is Taipei, where apartments stack so close together, they start breathing on each other. Those balconies look less like outdoor space and more like prison cells. Yes, the bars are technically for safety, but they also look like they're stopping the residents from escaping their tiny apartments. Some neighborhoods pack close to 40,000 people into a single square kilometer. That means when you open your window, you don't get fresh air, but a stranger's laundry routine. Your view is someone else's kitchen 3 meters away doing the exact same thing as you. Number 50. European brutalist architecture. The Nutsubidzi Skybridge in Tbilisi, Georgia looks like 3 buildings that refuse to be separated. It's a Soviet-era housing complex from 1974 to 1976, built on a steep hillside and connected by a narrow and high skybridge, clearly not built for anyone afraid of heights. But hey, at least you can visit your neighbor without going down to the ground like a normal person. The Bank of Georgia headquarters, located in the same city, looks like someone stacked office floors the way kids stack blocks, making it feel kind of overwhelming. Huge concrete boxes stick out in different directions, hovering over the slope like they're arguing with gravity. It was built between 1972 and 1975 for Georgia's Ministry of Highway Construction. The shapes are sharp and completely uninterested in your opinion. Western City Gate in Belgrade is sometimes called the ugliest building in Serbia. It was completed in 1979, and it's literally meant to be a gate for people arriving from the west. 2 towers stand side by side, one meant for offices and one for residents, both stapled together at the top. It is 117 meters tall and was actually the tallest building in Serbia for 42 years, until the West 65 tower finally beat it in 2021. Another one from Belgrade, the Karaburma Housing Tower, looks like a real-life concrete Jenga tower. This residential building has big boxy sections that stick out in different places, so the building looks slightly off balance even when it's perfectly still. The air conditioners hanging everywhere also add to the appeal. 2 Ayo in Nantes, France looks weird at a distance already. But then you look at the windows, each one a different shape and at random positions, almost seeming like it was just punched in wherever it felt right. This social housing project was built across the 1970s into the early 1980s and is made up of 18 towers and about 1,607 apartments. There's also a giant snake-shaped playground sculpture nearby, because nothing says home like a friendly serpent landmark. What's up with Europeans building such ugly banks? The Tuzla Bank building in Bosnia looks like a concrete factory with inhalers. Huge cylindrical ventilation pipes stick out of the facade like industrial binoculars aimed at the street. The building was originally clean and white, but decades of dirt stained the concrete dark. Some people online even said it looks like a kind of building a sci-fi villain would live in. Which one of these locations shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this.